Hi, everyone, and welcome back into the ConTinual Comics Lair. Our topic tonight is the Disney Plus program, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The Comics Lair is sponsored by Heroes Aren't Hard to Find and the annual Heroes Convention. I'm your host, Nancy Northcott, and I will warn you now that if you have not yet seen The Falcon and the Winter Soldier or Avengers Endgame and you plan to, you might want to come back and watch this program later, because we are going to talk about, obviously, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier and a little bit about Avengers Endgame. So we'll start by having our panelists introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their involvement and interest in comics in general and these characters in particular. Alex, you want to start?
Oh, okay. I can start with that. I'm Alex Simmons. I'm a freelance writer. To be specific in terms of comics, I've been writing comics off and on for about 20 some odd years. I've written Batman, Scooby-Doo, Archie, number of independent projects. I created my own character, Blackjack, which is an African-American soldier of fortune in the 1930s. And I've had the wonderful experience of working on two Black Panther projects, one of them being the Black Panther Psychology with Travis Langley. And the other was most recently the Black Panther Tales of Wakanda anthology that came out this year. As to Captain America, the Falcon, and the Winter Soldier, those are all characters that I've followed over the years more as a fan than anything else, and have enjoyed the work and seen the movies and, of course, watched the TV show. But we'll talk more about that as we go.
Okay, Van.
I'm Allen Plexico. I am author of some 19 novels and several nonfiction books, of which two of them I created and edited two books on Marvel's Avengers called Assembled and Assembled 2. And they go deep dive into the history of the characters of the Avengers, including some of the characters, obviously, in this TV show that we're going to talk about. And I'm also the host of the White Rocket podcast, where we talk about things like this every week on the pod. So.
Micaiah.
My name is Micaiah Johnson. I'm a science fiction writer of one debut novel that came out last year, not quite 19, but fingers crossed one day. As far as comics, I am an avid consumer and basically have been since the first time I laid eyes on Storm on the cover of a comic book, and I just dove in. So I'm an X-Men girl originally. Though in my academic work, I'm an academic and I study posthumanism. I do more work with comic books there as I study kind of any robotic figures aligned with race. So obviously cyborg, comic books provide a lot of material for me.
And for those of you who haven't seen one of these panels before, I write historical fantasy for Falstaff Books and several different versions, subgenres of romance. And with Jeannie Adams, I write science fiction. I've been reading comic books since I was 8 years old. I'm the novice when it comes to Captain America, the Falcon, and the Winter Soldier in the comic books compared to the rest of this group, because I read Marvel comics more intermittently and DC more regularly. So for anyone on the planet who has not yet seen Avengers Endgame, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier picks up after the end of that movie. And in the end of that movie, the aged Steve Rogers gives Sam Wilson Captain America's shield. And Sam doesn't know what to do with it. And the show picks up from there. It also picks up with the return of all the people who came back from Thanos' snap. Because in the movie, we saw the Avengers come back, but everybody came back. So that kind of is the launching point for the series. And so a core part of this series is the development of a relationship between Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes. What do you each think was the turning point in that relationship when they became a team, and why? Micaiah, you want to start us?
Team is such a strong word, right? They really feel like a couple of necessity. But I think it's so interesting, and why I was so excited to watch this series is they're kind of like, it's kind of like your partner's best friend, where the thing that linked you is now removed and you have to figure out how to interact. And I think that really that moment when Bucky kind of goes to Sam's home and like sees who he's and like where he's from, I think that did a lot for them as a partnership, to where it's just like, oh, you're not just the kind of rival for Steve Rogers' affections. You are a whole person, and we are all kind of in these similar places. Though it does make this odd kind of, I guess, association with the post Great Depression era that Bucky kind of was coming out of, and then the kind of rural Louisiana South. It seems like there's filmmakers were trying to do some sort of allegory there, where it's like, I too have been on hard times. It's something that we can talk about. But I do think that seeing those similarities and seeing them each other as not just the accessory to Steve Rogers was kind of what the series was doing.
Okay, Van.
No, that was really good. I don't know how to follow. I think they really are kind of an odd couple, and I think we want that, right? Because we want friction. That's much more interesting than if they just got along great from the very beginning. And I don't know that they ever completely reconcile totally, because we still have to have some friction there. I know that by the end of the series, they respect each other more. I think I always got the sense that a lot of it was bluster to begin with, that if the chips really down, they could cooperate. But otherwise, they had to make a public show of, I'm keeping you at arm's length. And I think you're right about they both wanted Steve's affection, and they saw the other as a rival. So you have to get them together. That's kind of the point of the whole story, is to get them at least to seem like they're together. But I'm not 100% convinced it ever fully happened.
Alex?
Yeah, I'm going to just jump back one notch to the end sequence of Endgame, when Steve does hand the shield over to to Sam. Just before he does that, Bucky's kind of cued in. He kind of has, it feels almost like he's anticipated where this is going. And so when Steve does hand him the shield, Bucky seems okay with that. He's good with that. My best friend has passed on to you something that's sacred, and I'm okay with that. I think where the real tension comes is when Sam gives it back. When what are you doing? What are you doing? Steve, honored you with, how could you? So he lets him down. And I think that pisses him off, because he already knows, and we have to remember that Bucky is dealing with major post-traumatic syndrome problems, because for a good portion of his existence after World War II, he was under mind control and he was killing people. He has a lot of blood on his hands, like Natasha. He has a lot of redemption to seek. And so he's struggling with his own demons. And at least he felt that Steve had passed the shield, the sacred talisman, onto the right guy, and the guy gives it back. I think that's really where a lot of the tension was. And Sam was basically trying to figure out, I don't feel worthy. And Bucky's not getting that. He's not seeing that. And I think that's where for me, that's where I felt a lot of the tension was coming from.
Yeah.
I 100% endorse that whole statement.
Yes.
But the line that resonated the most for me in the whole series was when Bucky's therapist made them do the eye gazing thing. I mean, it had some humor, and it's like, what, are you doing a staring contest? But then she made them sit there and do it. And what came out of Bucky's mouth that ties into Sam not taking the shield was, maybe Steve was wrong about you. And if he was wrong about you, maybe he's wrong about me. Because, of course, we get Captain America Civil War because Steve stands by Bucky through that whole movie. And to me, that admission of vulnerability on Bucky's part kind of pierced Sam's bristly resentment of their being there. And Sam says, can you just accept that I did what I thought was right? And that seemed to sort of, in those surroundings and in that context, diffuse a little bit of Bucky's resentment over Sam's choice. And so for me, that was a moment that really stood out in the series.
Well, and can I just add, I thought that I was just talking about this on another show the other day, and I made the point that I felt like, as much as Sam giving up the shield was kind of the catalyst for everything, I understood him doing it because it was new to him. He's trying to be a good guy. He's not wanting to start Civil War II on his first day on the job, right? And it looked like if he didn't give the shield over, because here's the government coming in and saying, yeah, we need it. We're going to do something honorable with it. We're going to put it in a museum and it's going to be great. What is he going to do? Say, no, it's mine. Then he's a villain, right? I thought that Bucky needed to take a step back and say, what would I have done if they'd come to me and asked?
He would have kept the shield and dared him to try and take it from him.
Yeah, that's him. That's true. That's true. But Sam's not Bucky, and I don't think that Sam would have done that.
No, and he didn't. And you're right. You're right. Absolutely. I think the other thing too is, we have to look at the other elephant that's in the room, that Sam is black, and he's grown up in the United States, and he has to go through a period in his own head of how do I be who I am, what I've seen, what I know has gone down, and carry that shield. What does it say when I pick that up? What does it say to me? What does it say to my people? What does it say to the rest of America, especially the rest of America that's not going to be okay with this? Where do I stand? Because that's one of the things about the character. He had to know where he stood in order to be able to carry that shield. Steve went through something similar.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Alex.
That's okay. I forgive you. No, Steve went through something similar when he was becoming Captain America, but he also had to go through the whole serum thing, and so he had to figure out, who am I as this character? Remember, they had him as basically a flag carrying. What was it? What's the word? Why can't I think of the word I want? Public image kind of thing. I can't find the word I want right now. I'm going brain dead. But they were using him as a talking point, and he's going on doing these shows with big musicals, and there's a war on. I'm supposed to be dealing with that, not this. And so he had to come in. So I think it's sort of interesting to watch Sam go through his own. Who am I? Where do I stand? What do I represent? What does this shield represent, other than my love for Steve and my respect for him and what Captain America stood for? If I pick this shield up, what does it mean?
Yeah, and I think that's why Isaiah Bradley is such an important figure, an important piece of dialogue, right? Nancy, when you say like that moment really stuck out to you, for me, the line that I think is also like at the center of this is Isaiah saying, this country will never let a Black man be Captain America, and no self-respecting Black man should want to. And I feel like that was so powerful and also so true, and also very meta, right? Because I feel like in the Marvel universe, the Black characters that they had were always attached to government, right? We got War Machine early, we get Steve, we get Falcon, we get these things where it's like, oh, these are very military kind of associated beings. And so when I first was hearing about the series, my fear was precisely that it was going to kind of be this kind of propaganda-y, but instead to look at the series as what it is, it has this kind of meta question where it's like, oh, when we ask this question, we are aware that we're also dealing with this other question. Like it gave kind of voice to that in the room. And so that's why I think of it almost as a braid, where you have Bucky saying one thing and Isaiah saying something, and Falcon kind of has to make that decision. Sam has to navigate those waters because you can't just not say it. And it just, and I just think that they did a really good job of, I was afraid that they were going to try to just colorblind it. And it's like, it's fine, be a hero. And so to invoke Tuskegee in the way that they did, and to have like the cops stop them in Baltimore, to have Bucky have to realize there are things that you do not know that Steve could not have known, that are also and it's literalized in Isaiah that there was another, super soldier, but it's also the metaphor of there's a lot of things undergirding this that you don't know and don't understand.
Well, I've never seen Carl Lumley be bad in anything. And I've been watching him since he was in Cagney and Lacey, like decades ago. And I think you really needed a good actor to pull that off.
Oh, yeah. Because
there's so many shades of emotion in that role. And it really did. It really does. Like you said, Micaiah, it evokes Tuskegee. Or did you say that, or did Vance?
Yeah, no, she did. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. And I just thought that was brilliant. And one of the things that seemed to me about this series is they don't just drop something out there and then move on from it. They don't get the momentary effect from it. They come back and tie it up at the end. And so since we're talking about that, how did you all feel about the resolution of Isaiah's story with Sam? Van, do you want to start us?
Well, I was more focused on the young man. I mean, I understood the need to sort of it was complex. It was painful in a way because you want to love Isaiah and you love Sam, and when they're being antagonistic with one another, and Sam's not fully understanding the history and everything, I have sympathy for Sam. He always means well, and it's like Isaiah wasn't going to be nice to anybody. But I was also focused on the younger character because, I know we're talking about such deep issues here, but I'm a comics fan. I'm a superhero fan, first and foremost here. I was looking forward to the younger guy becoming Patriot and forming the Young Avengers. So you can just file me away as superficial here, and you guys can have the more deep conversation about it.
Alex, did you want to add anything?
What was the question? So got lost.
What did you think of the resolution of the Isaiah Bradley storyline in the series?
I felt it was honorable. I felt it was not sugar-coated. I don't think that it was anything other than what it for a TV series needed to be. And again, not going too deep. I hear you, Van. But not going too deep. But there are questions, even with the rebels in this storyline. There was nothing in that storyline that was simple.
Right.
It was one man's patriot is another man's terrorist. So even the young lady who was leading the rebels, I could understand. I could get that. So you couldn't just go, oh, she's a bad person, and I hope they take her down, unless you're very shallow. So I felt that what happened between Sam and Isaiah was the right beat, because there's things that Sam is now he's now aware of, because he wasn't aware of Isaiah to begin with. He's now aware of that pain at least from what Isaiah has shared with him. He has come to some conclusions about himself, but he also is on a journey. So I felt like, if anything, Isaiah could, if you want to look down the road, could be a mentor in a way. He could go back and bounce conversations off of him and help Sam figure out his course as he's moving forward, so he wouldn't forget certain things. He can look back and go, oh yeah, right, let me not forget that. So I thought it was very good, and I thought it was there were a lot of moments in the show that I really enjoyed.
Micaiah?
Well, no, just exactly that. I like that distinction where it's like it did really what it needed to do for a TV show. I felt very much Black Panther vibes, where it's like the villain would speak and you're just like, oh, but that's not it's not wrong though. Like, there are a lot of really good points, and I appreciated that so much, that it was not an incredibly simple bad guy versus good guy. And I think in general, Marvel's TV work has been so complex. I've been really digging all of the Disney Plus series for that very reason, where it's like villain question mark, like they're really interrogating those stances. And it's not so black and white, to use a phrase that now is very loaded given the conversation, but it is much more complex. And it's absolutely that moment where it's like, I was upset that Carly, I always want to call her Carla, but Carly, when, you see her like kind of dead at the end, and I was like, oh no, because it's just like, but wait, that's the bad guy. And they're just like, yeah, but also, who knows? Like, it just was one of those things where I think it was incredibly difficult terrain to tread and still be entertaining. And they managed to do what they needed to do to pay service to those kinds of differences and not become didactic and boring in a lecture. It was still a very interesting, fun TV show that managed to kind of walk those difficult steps.
Yeah, and I really liked that resolution too. And I didn't expect the part with Isaiah's statue in the Smithsonian. I thought that was wonderful. But picking up on what Micaiah said about Carly, one of the moments in the movie about her that really, by the movie I mean like the whole 6 episodes, that really stood out for me was her interaction with Sam. And I liked that they picked up on Sam's background as a VA counselor and brought that into play when he was talking to her. And he was making progress when new Captain America decided to take charge.
Captain America Light.
Yeah, well, maybe this is a good
very light.
Maybe this is a good point to talk about them. So how did you all feel when he stepped out on the stage? Micaiah, you want to start?
Oh, do you all remember? Did you all watch it live? Do you remember when that aired? That was like, to have that scene where he's literally, it is the Captain America shield covered in the blood of an unarmed person, well, relatively like super soldier, just covered in the blood. And this was early 2020. This is like, there were protests certainly in my city, probably in yours as well. Like, it was such a fraught time. And this aired live at that moment when you were like waiting for midnight for it to come out. And it was just like, what is he doing? And that visual of Wyatt Russell, who did so good, because like the loathing I have for this man, it's like he's not an actor. I just said his full name. It's just like he was so embodied and like, no, I am Captain America. I am literally this. And then it gave this impression like, oh no, but you are Captain America and this is what you're doing. It was so intense. Just that image is stuck forever of the Captain America shield with just the blood of somebody dripping down that was of course videotaped. Like, that whole scene was just, I was like, I wonder where we're going. I wonder how much teeth this series is going to have. And then that series happened. I'm like, oh, we're just all in. It's all the teeth. We're just here for a ride.
Alex or Van, you want to add anything?
I do, but I'll let Van go first.
The only thing I was going to say is, I think you're right. It raises an interesting question for me, and I think it speaks to the complexity that Micaiah was just referencing. Who's the main villain of this story? You got about 7 that could qualify, and yet each one of them has motivations. Like, well, they're not really the main villain, I guess. And I mean, the person that's honestly the most villainous in the entire story, it may be Baron Zemo, and yet he's fun, wacky ally. So I love the fact that
great coat.
Yeah, oh yeah, you got the fur, just like in the thing. Yeah, I just love the fact that they took these characters who historically are really, really one-dimensional, fun but one-dimensional, and they made this really deep 3-dimensional story using them, and kept juggling, like, who are you rooting for? Who are you against? Who's the heroes? I mean, we're always for Sam, we're always for Bucky. But other than that, I mean, you could almost make an argument that Sharon Carter is the main villain. But I mean, isn't U.S. Agent the main villain? But no, he couldn't really help it. He had roid rage or whatever. And then, I mean, but isn't Baron Zemo? But he was an ally. But what about, I mean, it was just really fascinating to me how they took something that didn't have to be that deep. It looked at the beginning like it was going to be a James Bond movie with superheroes, and instead it turns into this really deep meditation on society and stuff. That kind of really surprised me and blew me away.
I'm going to say 2 things. Well, I'll try and say 2 things, only 2 things. One, I liked the introduction of this character whose civilian name I can't recall right now, but he who became Captain America Light. And it's almost that homespun kind of thing. It's like, I really want to be this I want to be this guy. I want to be this hero. I'm not sure I can be. And his buddy, who's black, which did not escape me, going, hey, you were great in the military. I got your back. Don't worry, you can do this. And there's a whole thing of where he starts to where he freaks out. It's a journey, it's an arc that was really fascinating to watch, and of course, when he was in a strange place anyway, and then his friend gets killed, and that snapped it, and so then it's like, well, I am this, and damn it, I'm getting mine, I'm getting revenge, you killed me, and some of that is, I mean, I've seen that in war movies. I've seen that, you get the, Audie Murphy with machine gun. He takes the hill, against all these enemy, and we give him medals. So to some degree, he sort of rushed in with all that, and yet, no, it was overkill. It was unnecessary, and it became this comment that, as you said, Micaiah, we're looking at the shield, the flag shield of America covered in blood. And that statement can resonate with what was happening then, what was happening during the Middle East, during Vietnam, during World War II. Just there's so many places you could go with that. But the other thing is, I just wanted to quickly mention that what Van was saying about one-dimensional characters. Yeah, Jack Kirby starting out when creating Captain America, but even then, how it was dealt with is sort of one-dimensional, but it was created during World War II. And to Joe Simon and to Jack Kirby, this was a very powerful symbol, and it was their way of striking a blow against Nazism and all of that. And I know that here in New York, Joe Simon talked about how the comic studio where he and others were working on Captain America got surrounded by neo-Nazis, and the police had to come and set up barricades to protect them. So, and then you have all the different writers in the comic book series that have brought these other levels to these characters over these, 50 years. And so literally, like with Black Panther and some of the others, these characters have developed and grown. And so what Marvel has done a marvelous job of, Marvel Television and Disney, because they bought them, what they did was a marvelous job of creating great television drama using these comic book characters based on the canon that has been developed over all these years. And I would, I gotta give a salute to those writers as well, who created this rich bed of resource that the television people were able to pull from.
It all feels organic because it's there. Like US Agent, I don't know if you could have told me that I would buy this kind of a turn where I wouldn't just think of him as like random hitman number 5, but the fact that his kind of, I guess, issue starts with, oh, but I did this stuff overseas and you gave me a medal and now there are all these other rules. Like it's so, it goes in line with the character. And even when we see the relationship with him and his best friend, once his best friend gets killed, we know that there's going to be blood. We know there's going to be a reaction. And I think that's the thing, is they're not drastically changing these characters or making them all something that they're not. I mean, they've done that with kind of the Mandarin and some others, but with these characters, it feels organic, it feels different and fresh, but it also feels appropriate. Like it feels like it does still fall in line with who these characters are. It's not kind of wild complexity. It's like, oh yeah, the bedrock was there. They're just kind of tweaking it for now.
Mm.
Yeah, and it kind of grabbed me that he picked up the vial of super soldier serum, but he just stuck it in his pocket until Lamar was killed. And then he injected it, because initially I was thinking, well, this is going to be like, the good guy goes after the bad guy, and at the last minute he stops himself from doing something really terrible. Only then he took the super soldier serum, and it was kind of like, this could go in really bad directions. And I liked that both Bucky and Sam said to him afterwards, you got to give up the shield. You got to give up the shield. They didn't wait for the government. It's like we were talking earlier about the legacy. This is our friend's legacy, and you ain't going to do that with it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But actually, in the show, both Bucky and Sam had character arcs. So let's talk about both of those for a little bit. What did you like the best about Bucky's arc, and was there anything that you didn't think quite worked? Micaiah, you want to start?
Oh, I feel like I'm talking so much, but of course I will, because that's who I am. I think what was important about Bucky's arc is that when you peel back the layers and you take away the arm and all this kind of fantastic, it is at its core the story of a soldier dealing with what they have done. And at the end of the day, like, it is the story of PTSD, the story of needing to go to therapy and like making amends, and really the story of somebody realizing that bad things you've done are not who you are. And I just feel like that is such a transportable arc, and that can be used in so many places. And it's such a really human and kind of soft, sweet idea to have, that what he really needs to do is like go through this healing with himself. And the idea that it's this Marvel villain going through this rehabilitation process is extraordinary, because it opens so much kind of opportunities for others. But it also, I saw that repeatedly, the references to kind of veterans and PTSD and like the marks left by what has happened. And so I think it's so important on so many other levels to see Bucky making peace with what he's done. I feel like Wyatt Russell, US Agent, is one version of seeing what you've done and enacting it. And then in Bucky, we have like this healthier kind of push to try to understand who you are apart from those things. And I think that that's an important story to so many people. And that's why I liked it. It's not kind of toxic, just get stronger. It was instead, find this path back to yourself.
Van?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that he, rather than going off and like joining the Avengers and doing battles and stuff or saving the planet, instead he's trying to go back and redress, like you said, his own things that he's done. And he's kind of put his own, not only his own quote unquote professional life on hold, but kind of his own personal life on hold too. Like everything he's doing is, it seems like it's just him being down and out, but instead it's him living near people that he can help and apologize to, even if they don't want it when they find out why he's, you know, doing it. And so, yeah, it really seems like he's an incomplete person because he can't get past what he did, even though it wasn't his fault, and he can't just go on with his life. And I'm that's an interesting story, but caring about him as a character, I'm wanting to see what finally gets him over the hump and he's able to say, I can close the book on that now and I can live the rest of my life as myself again after what's been done to me and what I've done to people because of that.
Alex, anything to add?
I would say that everything that's been said is eloquent and right on target. And the only thing I would add to it, or maybe illuminate a little bit brighter, was I feel that one of the most interesting things for me with the character was his slow and almost unconscious but casual attachment to Sam's family.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, because you got to remember, he started out in 1940s when he enlisted in the military and went over and fought overseas and then died overseas, got converted, blah 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 blah, into this machine, this killing machine. And he's just like Steve, he's still adjusting to life way beyond the point where he should have lived. And he has no family. He had for a long time no friends either. And so now it's like he is slowly beginning to put his world, like Van was saying, his personal life, slowly starting to put his world together. And that connection to Sam's family was that part of him that's opening to allow him to feel and be human. Not a killing machine, not a war machine, not an assassin, not an avenger, a human male. And somebody who needs to connect and connect with people, regular, organic, ordinary folk.
And if you go back to the first Captain America movie, we remember he was kind of a happy-go-lucky ladies' man. He wasn't a cold assassin until all this happened to him. There is a Bucky Barnes that is a really nice, easygoing guy, and that's kind of gone. And that's why I kind of want to see him find it again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was kind of like that in that scene with Sam toward the end when Sam's practicing all those different maneuvers with the shield. And they seemed really relaxed and comfortable with each other and kind of joking around a little bit. And that was kind of seemed to me like Bucky had really come out of his shell, because not only was he connecting with other people, but he was actually kind of relaxed around Sam, which I thought worked really well when we got into the big finish and the big fight, where they really did need to have each other's backs.
Mm.
The one thing about Bucky's arc that I would have liked to have seen that we didn't was, and I'm blanking on the character's name, the elderly man whose son he had killed in the very beginning.
Yes, right. Yeah.
I don't know that I necessarily needed to see that visit when he went to confess to what he had done and to apologize, to try to make amends. But I would have liked to have known a little bit more about how it went. And I'm sort of thinking maybe we didn't get that because it would have added 20 minutes to the show if they had done that. Because if you go there, then you have to go there. You can't go there and just kind of flick it off your sleeve. So maybe that's it. Anybody want to add anything else on Bucky before we move on? Okay, well then how about Sam? What did you think of Sam's arc? Alex, you want to start?
I thoroughly enjoyed Sam's arc. I thought he was and I just want to quickly mention that the Sam in the comic books was not military when it started out. He was not a military connection. That's something that's come from the movies. But either way, I liked even that he was a soldier. I liked how he carried that. I liked that he was comfortable in that skin, and obviously had grown very comfortable in the uniform of the Falcon and doing his thing. That opening sequence, that James Bond reference, Van, that opening sequence was spectacular. And yeah, I kind of thought, whoa, this is where most of the budget's gone, you know. and then, just like any really good story, things started to go south. And he was confused, and he was lost, and he was uncertain of this, and even going back to hang with his sister and the family ship, you know, the boat and everything, he wasn't making all the right moves. He didn't have it all together. And I like that he had to try and figure out again, not only just where he stood as a superhero, but also where he stood as a man, as a black man, as a member of a family that needed him. What were his responsibilities? I thought all of that was great. And then when he encounters Isaiah, I was like, wow, this was fantastic. Because yeah, quite often, well, I'll just put it this way: in my life, because of the way I've been around people, not necessarily black people, just people, I've been accused of not being black enough. As if, yeah, there is a meter for blackness that some people have control over that I wasn't told about. So I liked watching him deal with that. That yeah, there was some evil stuff done. And how are you going to process that? Are you suddenly going to flip now and throw it all away? I enjoyed that conundrum, and seeing Bucky deal with when the police officer stops, you know, them on the street and all that. I enjoyed all of that because it, for whatever reason, and thank goodness they didn't back off of, again, for a television movie, they did not back off of those points. And so I felt like they hit all the beats. And, you know, there may or may not have been, I think there was some time when they were in wherever, what was it, the island of lost convicts and thugs, Ramapur or something like that. I can't remember the exact.
Was it Majapur?
Majapur, right? When they were there, I thought there was some sort of, you know, more frivolous time to some degree, but overall, I enjoyed watching him grow into the man who would wear that Star-Spangled costume and be Captain America, the Captain America he was going to be. And I thought that was very key. And had he tried to be anything else, they would have lost me.
Van?
I felt like Sam is possibly the most likable person of all the MCU characters. Just as a person, he's the one I would most want to just hang out with and have a beer with and all. I mean, he's just a nice guy. He's just a nice guy. And Steve picked up on that in Winter Soldier when he was jogging. He didn't have to start talking to this guy and, you know, hanging around him and everything, but he picked up on it just like the rest of us did. And I didn't feel like Sam had as much of a character arc, certainly as Bucky did, because Bucky was in a much darker place and had a long way to go, things to get through. Sam just had to get a little experience and figure some things out and encounter some things and talk to some important people along the way. And they did that. So I feel like the Sam we got at the end was not appreciably different from the Sam we had at the beginning, other than maybe just a little older, a little wiser, and a little more world wise, you know, streetwise, not, but just more knowing how things work and what's expected of him and what the expectations are of Captain America, whoever that is. And so that was pretty much it.
Yeah. Micaiah?
Yeah, I'm just nodding emphatically to you, Van, because I think that that's kind of the joy of Sam. Is it's never, am I going to be a good person or a bad person? It's Sam wants to do the right thing. It's the journey of him figuring out what the right thing is so he can do that. And so for me, I felt the same way. I feel like Bucky had an arc where he was like, you see him changing, whereas Sam is just like, I need to gather this data and see these viewpoints and listen to these voices to understand what is the right thing to do. Because once he knows what the right thing to do is, he can do it. But it's like there was so much conflict. You know, you have Steve Rogers on this side, Isaiah on the other side, and like that kind of inner turmoil. But I agree, like Sam is just, first of all, the perfect person to replace you, fine. But yeah, that's the refreshing thing about Sam is once he knows the right thing to do, he does it. He's not going to take a back alley deal. He's not going to Loki or anything. He wants to do the right thing. He wants to be a good person. He just has to gather that data. And so I feel like the series was him hearing those viewpoints and gathering that data and figuring out the right thing to do.
You know, one of the things that I really liked about Sam's arc is when they went into the bank, the easy choice for the writers would be, well, this guy's the Falcon. Regardless of anything with the Captain America shield, this guy's the Falcon. He works for the government. Sure, he's good for the loan. No. And it just didn't work that way. And it also was kind of a jolt to Sam because he was so confident that he could fix this for his sister and it was going to be okay. And sometimes I sort of felt like one reason he wanted to fix this for his sister was that he had been gone so much and he wasn't there to help her along the way. And I thought that was a really nice everyday life kind of touch for the character. And a lot of times we don't get everyday life things for superheroes. That's just not considered to be as important as the flash and dash and the booming and crashing. But that's kind of what tells us who the character is how they react to those little things of everyday life.
One of my favorite scenes in Age of Ultron is the farmhouse scene, which does exactly what you're talking about. It suddenly makes them all human for that moment. And they needed to be in that place that was very nurturing and earthy and grounded for them to realize we just got our butts handed to us. We are now going to go back out to deal with this thing and we may lose. And what does that mean? How can we rally to that? And they do more as people who have a job to do. Then, okay, we got these powers, let's just go again. So I agree with you. That's that the human side is often much more fascinating in contrast to all of the glory and the costumes and the spectacular.
We could do another hour just on Falcon's sister because I just wish everybody had kind of a mouthy sister that we could meet to see them through that sister's eyes. I think it'd be great. She was my favorite part, hands down.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, I'm going to go out and get the job done. Let's talk about Sharon Carter for a few minutes.
Okay, Van. Wow.
What you thinking, Van?
I just don't even know what to do with Sharon Carter because for me, Sharon Carter is Steve's loyal girlfriend, Agent 13. Yes, it was always kind of creepy that he dated her after, you know, her mother or aunt or whatever the relationship was, got too old and was, you know, I guess the MCU, Feige and company just decided, yeah, that would be creepy. Let's don't have them date. Instead, Steve is gone. He actually had Peggy, which is a whole other hour, as you, Micaiah, we could do a whole hour on Steve going back in time and living a whole life with her, which caused everybody to pull their blow their brains out as far as how time travel works. But also it meant that we would never get Steve and Sharon, which was, they toyed with that, you know, in I guess Winter Soldier briefly, and then we're never going to get it. And so it kind of left Sharon as just hanging out there as a character with no purpose and no goal and no nothing. So let's just make her a super villain. And I'm like, okay, I guess, but I didn't see that coming. And it gives her something to do and it gives her a new arc going forward and stuff, but it just seemed to come out of left field. I never bought it as completely logical or realistic that they would have shut her out and like welcomed everybody else back in, that everything is fine now. You know, we got rid of Hydra, we've had the snap, all this is good. Everybody else come back in. Oh, Sharon, great hero, friend of Captain America. No, you're out. And I'm like, what? So that it never worked for me, and I'm trying to force myself to believe that this is going somewhere at least entertaining, if not logical. How's that?
No, but Van, how do you really feel about it, right?
Micaiah?
Truthfully, if I'm going to be perfectly honest, when I was reviewing characters, because of course I watched it when it came out, like, oh, I want to make sure I don't forget anything. I was like, who was she? And I'm like, are they talking about Madame Hydra? And I'm just like, Julie Louis-Dreyfus? And I completely forgot about like that whole arc of this grand villain. Julie Louis-Dreyfus and her 5 minutes stuck in my mind more strongly because it's who you expect to see there. It's like, ah, yes, now we're doing this. But yeah, I would have to agree with Van, maybe less passionately, that it did seem, I wanted to end up being untrue because her story is like, oh yeah, everybody else invited back. I had to make my own way and I decided to do this. And I agree where it's just like, oh, she just kind of got lost in this bureaucratic kind of gavel. So yes, I will say that I was not totally enthralled with her character and her character arc. I was so dazzled by everything else, though. I was like, listen, I probably couldn't have held another plot in my head anyway, so we're just gonna buy it and smile.
Fair.
I did not have Van's critical eye.
Alex?
They've said it all. I honestly, oh God, this is going to sound so wrong. I honestly could care less. I really, it really just, it was like, okay, a plot device. And I can only hope what Van hopes is that this is going somewhere. This is one of those little things that suddenly they're going to go, and I'm going, oh, geez, I didn't even see that coming, But otherwise, it's like, oh, okay, fine. What we got this leftover character. What do we do with it? Villain. Okay, fine. Thank you. So we'll see.
Did you watch the Easter egg at the end of episode 6?
If I did, I don't remember it.
Micaiah, you're nodding. Did you watch
where it's like her, now she's reinstated and then she's got all the goods.
Oh, yeah. I saw that. And like I said, I didn't care. I forgot about it, but yeah, I saw that.
But that makes it seem like, yes, this is in fact going somewhere. Although what I would have liked to have seen about it, because I also had difficulty, everyone else did, with they just forgot about her. She helped Cap at a crucial moment and they just forgot about her. What I had trouble with also was, okay, how did she decide to do this? And how did she develop this network? So she's known as the power broker. Mm-hmm. And why did she decide, which I guess we'll see if they follow up on it, to stay with that instead of going back to S.H.I.E.L.D. when they offered her, or whatever S.H.I.E.L.D. is currently, when they offered her the chance. And maybe that's leave something hanging to get people to watch the next one. But yeah, Van.
I just want to make a point here that with the first 3 phases of the MCU, once they decided where they were going with things, it was very obvious where they were going with things. You were heading toward Thanos a million miles an hour, and everything was going that way. With this current phase, it feels like they're throwing stuff out in every direction with every character in different directions, and I have no clue where all this is going. I don't know if we're heading toward Galactus, Doctor Doom, obviously Kang. That's a whole other thing, right? But I mean, I don't know how that has anything to do with Sharon Carter. I don't know how that has anything to do with Julie Louis-Dreyfus. I don't know how that has anything to do. I mean, it seems like every property, every franchise in the first 3 phases was coming together toward this one thing, and that was great. Now I feel like they're setting up about 20 different stories, and we got all the new stuff coming. So where are they going to play all this out? I mean, because you got things like Moon Knight and She-Hulk coming. Now we have Shang-Chi. There's so much, and Eternals. We got so much new stuff coming. I don't know where all this is where is it going to play out? Is there going to be like Avengers 5 and it's going to have 15 subplots that don't have anything to do with each other? I don't know. So it's really interesting to me to see. I would like to read Kevin Feige's brain a little bit and get a sense of what all this is about.
Well,
there's some very deep holes on Reddit you could fall into. Don't recommend it, but they seem to things figured out. I will say that what I do want to address is that for the first time, the Marvel TV shows are under the burden of being unified with the cinematic universe, right? Like nobody cared if Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was going wild with other things, or even the Agent Carter show, or the Netflix series, which I thought were really good and really didn't get their day, where they were able to do these kind of wild things without that pressure of it appearing in the cinematic. But now it's like, if it's on a show, because it's Disney Prime, it's that one network, the expectation is, oh, this is going to come into a movie. And everybody thinks that. It's like, it's going to be an end credit scene. People are already talking about that. And I don't know if they've figured out how to elegantly match the highs and lows that we expect from film to TV. I think when they revealed Sharon Carter, they thought it was going to be a spoiler alert for a different show, an Agatha moment. And that is not at all what happened, I think, for anyone. Nobody was like, I'm impressed and surprised. It was more like, oh, cool. But yeah, I think that they haven't really navigated keeping those things separate. It's like they're merging them, where it's like, I don't know how you can handle all of the plot lines in a show versus a cinematic universe or a film universe.
Well, to wind things up, because we're actually coming up on about 50 minutes, what final thoughts do you have about this series run? And if you had your wish list, what's the top thing on it for the next season, assuming there is one? Who wants to start?
It's a lot of pressure.
I'll start. That's fine. I'm not good at starting, but I'll do what I can. My final thoughts on this series is that of the three Captain America movies, the second one to me by far is the best, and it's a top 5 Marvel movie. It just was so good, and a lot of that was because of how it focused on the characters of Cap and Sam and Bucky and all that. And so this miniseries took what was really a lot of what was really good about Winter Soldier, the movie, and gave us a lot more of it. And that's one of the reasons I really enjoyed this series so much, is it played on what was already successful and enjoyable. Now, I don't see this gets, if there's a second series of it, that gets into the whole question again of where are they going with all this. And I've got to feel like you'll get basically Sam's issues being Captain America and Bucky still trying to make amends and find his own way in his own life, and something will have to happen to bring them back to collide again. And hopefully there will be sparks, because again, they're much more interesting when they're bickering than when they're like hugging each other, I think, even though we want them to hug, but it's more interesting when they're bickering. So I don't know. If I knew where all this was going, I'd be making $1 million somewhere, but that's the thoughts.
Okay. Anybody else?
I have a very simple one. I'm a simple creature. All that will make me happy is for Bucky to be dating Sam's sister. I don't ask a lot. I have a very tiny list of demands. That's all I ask. I ship it. I want it. Just he's like trying to brood and she hits him with a pan or something. Like I have visions. The other thing I would expect to see is, I think Falcon has made peace with the US's kind of not so great past. I think it'll be interesting to see him as Captain America having to reckon with something if he discovers something currently happening. And what is he going to do when he's in that position as Captain America, seeing injustice with what he's supposed to represent? So that can happen fine, whatever plot depth, but really Bucky and the sister, really that's where I'm invested.
Well, you know, in the comics, Bucky dated Black Widow, and that's off the board now. So path is clear for her. There you go.
There you go. Unless she comes back. Okay. I would say that I'm cool with Bucky dating the sister. I think I'm down with that. That's fine. And I would like, because I know where the formula would go, but I would prefer if they do another series with them, that the threat is something really outrageous and really deadly and on a grand scale, and that while dealing with that threat, we can still get some of the exchange and interactions that you're talking about, Van and others. But I don't want the next story to be focused on the humanity of all this again. I now want to see, okay, we think we got it together, and here comes all hell and hallelujah, and how do we deal with that? And again, like I said, with Age of Ultron, and even with Endgame, the beginning of Endgame, where we got our butts kicked, we blew it, we lost. How do we come back from that? I would like to see some of that in there as well, because I think that would be the next test of them as a team, as well as Sam, carrying the shield.
Well, I don't really have much to add to what you all have said. One of my favorite moments in the end of the show was when Sam appeared as Captain America and he had the wings. And my first thought was, but Captain America doesn't have wings. And then my second thought, right on its heels of that, was, this is a new Captain America. This is Sam's Captain America, not Steve's Captain America. And I think that keeping the wings was a way to underline that. I mean, why would you give up a skill set you've spent all these years developing,
Remember, Sam doesn't have the super soldier formula. He's just a guy with that shield, so he needs some advantage.
With an incredibly athletic body to take the beating he's done. He did through those episodes and keep getting up.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we're actually coming up on time. So to wind up, if each of you would tell people where they can find you and information about your work, and if there's anything you've got coming up you'd like to mention or just out that you'd like to mention, that would be great. Alex, do you want to start?
Yeah, so quickly, I'll say again, Black Panther, Tales of Wakanda came out earlier this year. Please go out, a great anthology, go out and get it. I have a story in there. The best place to find me would be my website, Simmons Here and Now. It's all spelled out, simmonshereandnow.com, because if Facebook and Instagram crashes again, you can't find me there. But if it's still up, you can find me on both of those as well.
Good, Van.
On Twitter, I'm at Van Allen Plexico. Is always good to find what I'm talking about lately. My website is www.plexico.net. I'm a .net, plexico.net. And the thing I would point viewers of this to is my 9-volume superhero novel series, The Sentinels, where it's very much like my version of the Avengers, the Justice League. It's called The Sentinels. If you go to www.plexico.net, you'll see links to it and everything. They're illustrated novels running some 9 volumes, each one about 300 pages long, and it's a great long cosmic saga with lots of characters and lots of fun interaction like this.
Cool beans.
Micaiah?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm Micaiah Johnson on Twitter with an underscore between my first and last name, because somehow I'm not the first Micaiah Johnson on Twitter. It was very upsetting. And I'm not very much on other social medias, which apparently today was a good thing, because Twitter was fine, I guess. Also, my website is just micaiahjohnson.com. If you want to read my work, I have forthcoming short stories and a bunch of things that I'll post about on Twitter. But my debut novel came out last fall, The Space Between Worlds, which is a science fiction multiverse story. Thank you. And then the next book is coming out, and my voice goes up when I talk about it because of the anxiety of finishing writing it. So that's a deadline you see kind of encroaching over my head, but it will be coming forth as well. I cannot just write short stories forever and just skid by, apparently, according to the people I told I would write a book, which was my bad.
What?
Well,
No.
You can find me here at ConTinual, obviously. My website is www.nancynorthcott.com. I'm also on Twitter, where I spend more time than is good for me, and I'm at Nancy Northcott. I do have an author Facebook page that I sometimes remember to do something with, but the best place to find me is my website or Twitter. And my latest release is The Steel Rose, historical fantasy set between Napoleon's escape from Elba and the Battle of Waterloo. A magical artifact brings Frenchmen flocking to Napoleon's banner, and a seer and a wizard spy have to steal it before he plunges Europe back into war. I'd like to thank everybody for joining me for this panel. It's been great. And I'd also like to thank our sponsors, Heroes Aren't Hard to Find, and the Heroes Convention. For more information about them, you can find that at www.heroesonline.com. And we're out. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate
fun.
it.
This was so much fun.
Yes, absolutely.
Fun, yeah.
Yes.
You guys are very, very impressive. You made me feel really dumb. So that's great.
Oh, stop. No.
My computer to work. What are you talking about?
Yeah, no.
I need to get my lighting sorted out. I'm trying. Look at your background with all the books and stuff.
I do a lot of
sticky notes.
I do a lot of this stuff, so I just put it all back there.
Yes.
Yeah, but I seem to remember that I saw an interview you did at Dragon Con where you had actually changed what was on the shelves so that it would be an accurate backdrop for the interview that you would. I can't remember if it was the Dan Abnett or the George Perez, because I saw them both.
It was Dan Abnett and Graham McNeil. When I was talking to them, I had a lot of Warhammer stuff behind me just to make them feel at home. And then when I did an ESPN interview, they got mad at me because you could actually see like the company logos, and they're like, "You can't have any IPs behind you." I'm like, "Dang it!" So I had to turn books around for them.
Oh, jeez. Micaiah, right?
Micaiah.
Yeah, Micaiah. Have you bought a ring light? Because that would take care of the lighting problem.
I had one, and truly just before this started, I went and it like broke open, like it's a clip, and then it like did that, and I was like, oh, that's excellent timing. So if we do another panel, I promise I will be better lit and be less like an ogre. All I can do is like lean closer to my lamp, and then I just look like I'm trying to eat your head on my Zoom.
No, actually, I was thinking more like you're sort of like around a crystal ball, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I like
yeah,
that.
there you go.
Give me magic powers, please.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. You and Wanda.
Well,
Oh,
Jim will edit this. It takes about 2 weeks. And when it posts on the Facebook page, I will let you all know. And I'll also send you the link if you don't already have it for the ConTinual green room, because sometimes people post in there and say, I have X number of slots for a panel on this, who wants to join it? And so if you've mainly done comics panels, that doesn't mean that's all you can do. If somebody posts something that you're interested in participating in, whatever it is, feel free.
Van, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to write down, Van, what's your podcast?
The White Rocket Podcast. We talk about, it's the name of the publishing company that I run. And so we talk about all kind of pop culture things. We have movies, comics, everything.
that's
White
why
Rocket.
your mic is so good. You're a podcaster. I
Rocket
knew it.
Podcast. Okay.
Dang your podcasters.
Is that on Apple and all that?
Yeah, it's on.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it is.
So mine is Tell the Damn Story.
Oh,
Writing it down right now.
There you go.
that's a great title.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it
Thank
is.
you. Yeah, I do it with my buddy Chris Ryan. We just this week we had just interviewed Teal J. Glenn. There it is, Teal J. Glenn, who's written over 500 and some odd books and magazines and articles and short stories. But the week before that, or 2 weeks before that, we interviewed Julie Bell, which was so much fun. I don't know if you've seen her artwork. She's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So it was just,
Yes.
yeah. But
Oh my
it's
goodness.
Teal James Glenn beat me for Best Novel of the Year this year at the Pulp Factory Awards. I finished.
sorry.
Yeah, I was in the 4 finalists, but he won. So that son of a.
No, it was PLJ Green. Yeah, that's who it was. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Well, it was different. Yeah, totally different guy.
Totally
Yeah.
different person.
Yeah, right. Okay, I'm gonna check you out. I'm gonna check you out.
Very cool.
Yeah,
And same here.
And
Okay.
Nancy, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you very much.
all. I really appreciate it. And hope everybody does well. And I will let you know when this goes up. And if you ever have an idea for a panel you want to suggest, you've got my email. Shoot me an email, because I'm really open to ideas.
You got it. Okay.
Awesome. Thank
Take
you
care.
so much. This
Take
was
care,
so great.
everybody.
Thank you.
Good night, y'all.
Bye.